Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. For those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Emily and I'm an indie author. I'm a photographer, I do tattoos on the occasion, and I'm also a digital artist. But this channel is mostly focused on writing and indie authors and just sharing the love of books and knowledge and just kind of like a little bit about my life too. It's kind of a mixture of everything. You'll kind of learn that if you decide to follow this channel, that it's kind of a little bit of everything. But yeah, today I'm going to be going over my poetry books and some of my favorite poems from certain ones and just what they're about and who wrote them, etc. And I'm gonna go over that all with you now. When it comes to book talk and just books overall, I've noticed that poetry is often a genre that gets overlooked very easily. Sorry, I heard something behind me. It's a genre that gets often overlooked, and it's because I've noticed at least that poetry is such a personal experience between you and the writer, at least for me, that it's harder to, I don't know, honestly. To be honest, I think a lot of people are actually very intimidated by poetry. And I'm not gonna lie, I think it's because in school, it's such a daunting thing. Like, it's such a, I don't know, poetry is very intimidating when you're in high school or middle school. Poetry is very, it's complex because it's deep. And the thing is, and even when it's not deep, the whole point is that you can interpret it differently. And I think I don't know, my theory at least is that a lot of kids got reprimanded in school for not interpreting it the right way. When in reality, it's like, technically they can interpret it however they want. It's poetry. But anyways, I hate those types of people where it's like, actually, like, the author meant this when he said the curtains are blue. He was depressed. And I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe. But I'm like, have you ever thought that maybe he just likes the color blue and he made the curtains blue? Like, I don't know. Anyways, long story short, I just believe that a lot of people are intimidated by poetry because of those like childhood fears of being wrong and being reprimanded for being wrong, when in reality, there is no wrong. You can just interpret poetry however you like and whatever you like and read what you like and don't read what you don't like. It's really that simple. But anyways, so I'm going to be going through my poetry books with you guys, and yeah. So the first book I'm going to be going over with you is a book called Nocturnal by Wilder, who is an Instagram poet. I have my little poetry book pile right here. So here's the thing. I got really into poetry maybe a few years back, and I followed a bunch of Instagram poets and just got really inspired by getting back into writing overall. The thing is, though, is that as time kind of grew on, like, trust me, I get it. You have to market yourself and marketing your brand as yourself as a brand, etc. But like Instagram poets, I have mixed feelings about. I definitely enjoy some of their writing. Others, I'm just kind of like, I'm not a Rupi Kaur person, for example. I don't like her work personally. I understand why it exists. I like it as like a book of thoughts or like sentiments maybe. I wouldn't necessarily call it poetry in my opinion. Like I said, you can interpret things however you want. So to some people it is poetry. That's totally okay. I don't know, at least in my own opinion, I think it's lazy writing. I don't know, it's just very simplistic, and that's totally okay. It's just more, to me at least, it's just more a book of thoughts or a book of, like I said, sentiments rather than poetry. I wouldn't necessarily call it poetry, but that's just me. But yeah, this first book, Nocturnal by Wilder, who is an Instagram poet, has very similar pieces where they're very short. As you can see, they're very short. Some of my pieces are short too. That's the whole point. But what I love about Nocturne is it has these beautiful, beautiful images inside that reflect what the poems are about. And like, I kind of wish, it almost makes me wish I added more illustrations to my poetry book. So like even the Starry Night Sky, or like this one's really nice. It's like a stork taking off. It makes me wish I actually added more to my poetry book. Here's the back. But yeah, so a really cool poem from this one is called Falling. And it goes like this. And I will tell her, even if heartbreak lands at your feet, the world will not look at you any differently. Instead, it will remind you that even if love lets you go, it doesn't mean you aren't beautiful. Sorry about the creaking floors upstairs. I can't really do anything about my loud-ass neighbors. I will show you the flowers, and when she speaks of their beauty, I will point to the clouds. Everything grows from the thing that falls, and there is nothing that the sun can't heal. It's cute. I love the works in this. Let me read you a piece that's a little bit longer. This is from the piece with the stork. But this one's called A Heart Held Up by Trees. Hold on to my limbs, you said. So I grabbed you tightly between calloused hands that already knew you by heart. You should know that my skin cracks under pressure and I bruise easily. But that will never stop me from climbing above the shades of green to see the world through your eyes. Looking down at the forest floor, I am reminded of the damage they have caused, making homes out of you, never knowing that what you've been through. And as I cry myself to sleep in the bed of your knee, you remind me that all hearts take time to grow. Maybe all along you've been the one holding me, a heart held up by trees. There's a lot of themes of nature in this book, which I really enjoy because I'm just a nature person overall. Like, this section is called Howl, and there's like a little wolf. Yeah, the illustration really just makes this book, I think. It really flows with it very well. Like I said, now that I'm really thinking about it, like, I really wish I added more illustrations to my poetry book. I think there's maybe like 10 in mine. But yeah, if you're a fan of shorter poetry and imagery, and if imagery like helps you interpret and it helps you read, honestly, good. Like it. I loved it a lot. It's really short. I don't know if it's still available, to be honest. I haven't really looked at Wilder's page in a while, but definitely a good book to read. Okay, so the second book that I'm going to share with you guys is called Bare Roots, a poetry collection by Molly S. Hillary. So this cover is actually very similar. There are a lot of similar covers that I've seen out there in general, but this cover is actually very similar to one on a poetry book of my own. Just like the whole heart with flowers. So this is Bare Roots by Molly S. Hillary. And then this is my little chapbook, From Within a Broken Heart. And this also has flowers and a heart. But anyways, so Bare Roots. I really like this one. It's a little bit longer, as you can see, for a poetry book. But I actually like that. I think it makes it worth the price. I think it makes it just worth reading. The pieces are a little bit longer, as you can see. This is one I'm going to read. And it also has little illustrations in it that you can see. But these ones are much more simplistic. There's not as much darkness, not as much themes of nature, but they're like little doodles. And I kind of like that. It's very, it's almost as if you're reading someone's like journal, like poetry journal, you know? And I really like that. So this is Crybaby by Molly S. Hillary. Crybaby. Ever since I could remember, my eyes would never stop leaking. My constant emotional episodes always embarrassing me, never ceasing. It happened to me time and time again. My spirit kept on breaking until one day I promised myself I'd be the best at faking. I'd hide my tears from family. I'd hide my tears from friends. I'd be the strongest girl there ever was. They'd all owe me amends. And now, years later, far from it all, tears should be safe to show. But you see, I once was a crybaby, and I never want you to know. That is so powerful to me and beautiful to me as someone who does, I used to cry a lot as a child. Then I like cried like not at all in like middle school, high school, And then now I cry all the time, but like it depends. If I'm emotional, I'll cry, sometimes. Movies though, I don't cry, I've noticed. But there's another piece that I really like from this book. It's called Being a Nice Girl. And I can relate to this in the sense of like being, oh, she's so nice, she's so cute, blah, blah, blah. Like, she's so perfect. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, I guess self-embellishing myself. I more so mean in like how when people have that stigma that you're just this good little student girl and, X, Y, and Z, and they don't see on the inside that you're actually really suffering. So I really like this poem. It's called Being a Nice Girl. Being a nice girl was surviving a war. My voice and concerns often silenced, stifled, or mocked in some way. That is, if I actually worked up the courage to even speak at all. Over time, I simply stopped trying to use my words. I spoke with self-violence instead. And the reason why I relate to that is because, like, I am someone, who has struggled with self-harm. I've visible X, Y, and Z. But that spoke to me because as a teenager, I didn't speak a lot. Like, I was a very quiet teenager. to the point where like when people meet me now, they're like, oh my God, like you're talking, like smiling, like what? I've even had people tell me like, oh my God, like this is the first time I've seen you smile, like you're so beautiful, blah blah blah. Like I just have to say, like you look so happy, you're glowing. And I'm like, and I take it as a compliment always, but it's just one of those things where it's like it's a direct reminder of like how you used to be. And that poem just spoke a lot to me as a, you know, a former very depressed teenager. So Bare Roots, Molly S. Hillary, definitely worth checking out. Again, like a lot of these books, I think they're all still in print. I think a lot of them are still available. Some of them I'm not sure. I will be honest. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. Next book I'm going to talk about is actually a traditionally published book, I believe. This is Please Don't Go Before I Get Better by Madison Kuhn. I used to follow her on Twitter. I don't think, or X, whatever. I refuse to call it X. But anyways, she used to be active there, and I don't know if she still is, to be honest. I think she had a baby and got married and, you know, began her life, etc. So I don't really know what her writing journey is right now, but Please Don't Go Before I Get Better, I got at a Barnes & Noble. Really great book. I think she's in her late 20s, early 30s. So she's a relatively young writer like me, and I love this book so much because it's very real. It's very real, but at the same time, it's real in the sense that it's relatable as like a young woman, you know, in regards to, you know, please don't go before I get better. Like I said, having been like a very depressed teenager and just depressed person overall, a lot of these poems spoke to me. So there's this one that she has called Move Slowly. And again, like there are some illustrations in this book. Not too many, but again, they're very like doodle-like. So I'm assuming she wrote them drew them herself, which is actually super cool. But this one's called Move Slowly. The world looks so different, smells different, feels different. When you move slowly, watch your feet. Take 2 steps inside of a cement square. Lift 1 foot up and let it fall down like honey. I saw a hummingbird for the first time. Watched the wind blow through palm trees. Felt it on my face, smelled the purple flowers on the sidewalk. Didn't think about anything at all besides here and now and slowly, slowly, slowly. And I like that because it's about like, at least the way I interpret it is that you're moving through life so fast. You're moving through, sorry, my cat's having zoomies, but you're moving through life so fast and at such a pace that it's hard to replicate even, that it's kind of important to remember to slow down. And it's important to remember to like cherish the small moments. Damn, where my cats were running around and yeah. If you have cats, you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, so the second poem that I wanted to read is, it doesn't really have a title. A lot of the poems are short, a lot of the poems are long. This book, I like that it kind of has both. Some of them are really short and some of them are like much, much longer. So it actually gives you a nice variety. I feel for like a poetry book versus like some of them are really all short and some of them are really all long, etc. But this one says, and like I said, I love Madison Kuhn's writing in the sense that, like I said, it's relatable as a young woman, at least for me. And I like that the way that she voices that. So you'll see that in this poem. I think I'll move back home and make a dozen boys fall in love with me, and just to prove to myself that I am more than he made me feel I was. I've given myself to him for the past 3 years, but I think he wouldn't like me if he really got to know me. Despite sharing a bed for so long, he doesn't really know me. Not really. And that is so relatable to me because I have definitely been in that situation before where I'm with a, you know, lover, partner, etc. And then just realizing after a while that like, you don't know me at all. Like, you really don't know me at all. If like, you know, this is how you're treating me or this is, you know, what you're saying or X, Y, and Z. And like, I feel like even if within like friends, like we can all kind of relate to that, you know, is like someone you thought was your friend turns out to either A, not B, or B, like they just, there's no spark, there's no click, there's no nothing that really connects you and like cements that together, you know what I mean? So the next book I'm going to talk about is by another Instagram poet. Again, I don't know if this book is still available. I don't know if he's even still active on Instagram as a writer, but this is Letting Things Go by Faraway. And I like this book because it poses a lot of questions, and it poses a lot of like self-reflection, if that makes any sense. Like I even have to think about like what I'm, trying to say. But when I think about his poetry and his work, it just, like I said, all I can really think of is the fact that he makes me think, and the fact that, like I said, he just poses really good questions. And I love that about his writing. So I'm going to share 2 poems with you. I Still Want Love and The Sinking Heart. And these are actually on the same page, which is really funny because this book actually does have page numbers versus mine doesn't. So it's always so hard to find shit. But I'm like, I just didn't feel like adding page numbers. Anyways, this is I Still Want Love. I hate relationships. I hate trying to trust someone when every atom in my body tells me that trust is deadly. I hate trying to tell my story to people who probably won't last very long in my life. I hate listening to theirs and filling my head with things I'll have no use for when we eventually fall apart. I hate doing this again and again and again. Despite all that, I still want to be proven wrong. I still want to tell my story. I still want to listen to theirs. I still want to try again and again and again. I still want love. And I love that because it's relatable. But again, he poses these questions of like, do I want love? Yes, I do. What can I do to get there? Okay, I have to do this, but everything about this, trusting others and being open is, against my instincts right now. So it's like he poses these questions of like what you're willing to do, what you're willing to go through, blah blah blah. Like he just I love his work. I love all these writers' work. I just love poetry overall. Which is probably why writing a narrative novel has been more difficult for me lately, but that's okay. The next poem, The Sinking Heart. Things start to weigh on your heart, As years go by and people hurt you, your heart becomes heavier, and you become far less willing to take chances on people. You could have risked it with this person in the past, but your heart is far too heavy now, and you are sick of seeing people become exactly who they say they aren't. It begins to feel like one more heartache is all it will take to make you give up on love completely. Here's the secret. It's just a test. Don't give up. I love that because when I reflect on it a little bit, I interpret it a little bit more as in like a platonic type of love, like a friendship. And the reason why is because at least in relationships, I don't know. I feel like dating nowadays, like, not gonna lie, I feel like people kind of just show you who they are right away. But to the point where like, it's like maybe you shouldn't go around telling people that, X, Y, and Z. Or honestly, maybe you should. So then you could just find someone who likes what you like and unapologetically, and like if you're a fucking weirdo, by all means, be a weirdo. Who cares? But when it comes to that, platonic friendship, at least in this poem, I've had so many friends, like the poem said, become exactly what they say they wouldn't be. And like, it's hard because then you have to pose that question of like, okay, well, are we still friends? Can I align my morals with this person? Can I even be honest with this person? Can I call them out and tell them, hey, what you're doing is not okay, or set a boundary even without them getting all fucking crazy on you? Like people and their insecurities and just everything that they're going through. The way I interpret it is more of a platonic friendship. And just through my own experiences, but I love this book for that. Next, I actually have 2 books. I don't know if these ones are still available. They might be. And I know she's pretty big on TikTok now, this writer. I don't know if she still writes. I think she does more like spoken word, like aesthetic type content now. But she was a poet. Probably still is. Her name, I don't really know how to pronounce her name. I'm not going to lie. I should know by now. But I think it's Nyeshi Lizette Parker. And she has 2 books that I really enjoy. One of them is called Rabbit Holes. And the other one is called More Than Anything. And I have both of her books just because I really love her writing. And I really love her as an artist. I follow her on TikTok and Instagram too. Rabbit Holes was her first book. And the reason why I bought this one, besides just liking her work, is because Rabbit Holes was actually the poetry book that inspired me to write my own. Which is great. And I actually watched Nyeshi's YouTube video. She had a YouTube video a while back on her publishing experience and what she did in order to publish her poetry book. And I remember like when I was still writing mine, I used to watch that video on repeat, like over all day, every day, like to inspire myself to keep going until I could get my poetry book published. And that's something that I really love. And that's why this book will always hold a special place in my heart. But yeah, there's a lot of great works in here. And okay, here's the thing. Rabbit Holes is kind of about, honestly, the way that I interpret it the most is like Rabbit Holes is about processing change. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the overall theme is very like Alice in Wonderland. Alice, you know, falls down the rabbit hole, etc. And it's like the rabbit hole of life, you know? It's like, I guess, a metaphor for life and adulthood and the new responsibilities that you have, and like that you like working and, you know, paying bills and all that stuff, and adjusting to that kind of life when you might not necessarily be ready. You know, you're never going to be ready. And that's something that I really like about this book. But her poems, I've noticed, are much longer. So they're like longer, like way longer. And I really like that because there's more to actually interpret and there's more to actually delve into. If anything, I actually kind of want to reread this book, and I want to annotate it. I feel like that'd be really cool. There's a poem here called The Other Woman that I really like. I look into his eyes and you blink back at me. You put your hand over his heart and it echoes the way I say his name. In this tug of war, our arms are tired and he is sipping a pina colada. He kisses your lipstick onto my lips and I realize that he wears the same shade, Original Sin. We have so much in common. I wonder if secretly we are in love with each other through the vessel of him. And it's such an interesting perspective on like the other woman. I have only been cheated on once, thank God, and I'm blessed for that. Not blessed that I got cheated on, but blessed that it has only happened to me once, and that, you know, it was just that situation, and such. But when in regards to, you know, that whole situation of, you know, being cheated on, etc., it's such an interesting perspective to have that perspective, I guess, you know, like, of fuck the guy. Well, I love that perspective, if anything, like, fuck the guy, fuck the cheater. If anything, like, well, if she didn't know, here's the thing. Like, if she didn't know, it's like, let's go get, like, fuck him. Like, let's go to the movies together. Like, he can leave, you know? But if she knew, though, that's a totally different story. That's a fucking homewrecker and she can go fuck herself. But anyways, I love that Nyashi's pieces are longer. And that's something that I really actually treasure, because for me, at least, personally, I write poems that are kind of in the middle, shorter, longer. It really depends on my mood. But I love that her poems are mostly longer. I feel like it just gives so much more depth to them. And there's another one that I really like that I want to read to you guys. It's called The Jungle Book. This book also, just so you know, doesn't really have illustrations at all. Not really, except in the front. So there's rabbit holes, stars, and then there's Alice. But The Jungle Book. It's dangerous to raise your kids in the city. We become concrete, callous things, howling at the fluorescence because it's the closest thing we'll get to starlight. So starved for daylight that we'll call anything pure. We scream at the skyline like iron beasts, climb up lamppost moons. Born from leather, skin like concrete, we are always just waking up, always waiting for the train, always wiping away that big apple blood. Finding bruises from nights that we can't remember. Here, summer still looks like December. Ahead of time and losing our minds, there is a restlessness that we were born with. Never lose, never sleep, never die. And I love this poem because I don't know Nyashi, but we've messaged on Instagram before, and I believe I don't know if she's from Brooklyn or Queens, whatever. Obviously that's none of my business, but I do know that she lives in New York City, and I live in New York, and I'm very close to New York City. And I worked and, you know, went to school there for a little bit and blah, blah, blah. So it's very familiar to me. And I love that poem because it's so true. Like, I feel like when you grow up in a city, you have this hardness to you that just, I just can't compare it. I mean, you can, but like, it's just such a vast contrast between people that live in rural areas that it just makes me speechless sometimes. Like, it's really hard to relate to those types of people sometimes. And, you know, having a poem that can kind of reflect that mentality of the city, growing up hard, growing up cold, growing up not in nature. It's hard. See, like people, like right now, I live in a place that's pretty rural, and everybody laughs at me because I see like a deer or like a bear or something, and they're like, oh my God, like that's so normal, like, haha. And I'm like, bro, like I didn't grow up with animals. Like I grew up with like rabbits, birds, and squirrels. That's it. I grew up in like a very suburban city-like area. There were no deer. There were no like barely raccoons, barely possums. No bears, definitely. No foxes, nothing like that. Nothing. Like I said, the most we got were squirrels and rabbits and maybe sparrows. But yeah, people will laugh at me all the time when I see shit like that, and it's just kind of annoying because I'm like, bro, like, are you really that intolerant that you can't accept that someone had a different perspective than you? But okay, sure, have a good laugh. But I like that poem a lot because it kind of, not only can I relate to it in my own way, but like it makes me feel very validated and seen as a hard exteriored person who grew up in like a city environment, you know? And I just cherish that a lot. So the last book that I want to talk about is called Ceremony for Heartbeats, a poetry collection by William Thomas Brumley. He doesn't go by that anymore. He goes by William Feynman because he is a personal friend of mine. He is breaking into acting, which is super cool. And that's his stage name. But Ceremony for Heartbeats is a really heartfelt collection. Again, like the heart, like symbolism. I love it. See, and the cool thing is, again, like, where's the other one? See, like, I get when people get insecure, competition, whatever. Like, I get it. I understand why it exists. But at the same time, I don't understand it for my own whatever. Because, like, say, for example, look, here are 3 poetry books with 3 hearts on them that all look very similar, right? And yet, they all look completely fucking different. Completely different. This one looks completely different than this one, looks completely different than that one. And like, that's the whole point. That's why I think it's beautiful, because even if it's similar, it's like they're completely different and they're completely different interpretations of the same thing, which I think is cool because maybe it's just me, but I love perspective and I love hearing people's perspectives. Even if I don't agree with them, like I will hear your perspective. Tell me why you think the way you do. You might be wrong, in my opinion, but again, tell me what makes you think the way you do, you know? And something about William's writing does that a lot for me, I've noticed. So the 2 poems I'm going to show you, again, are actually on the same page. Sometimes I flip to the pages, sometimes I have them in mind, but these ones are just, again, page numbers, and I just love that they're similar. The first one is called A Shadow Not My Own. And I really relate to this in regards to like the voices in your head kind of like arguing with each other. A shadow not my own. I've got a shadow. Sorry, just weird noises. I've got a shadow, not one that is my own. It's one that comes in 3s. It haunts me, forever reminding me that I am alone, a constant reminder that I will never create nor contribute. Others accompany the shadows. They each wear a different mask. One is envious, one is frightened. The other wants love, but can never achieve it. I've called to them, but they have no ears nor mouths. Communication is futile. One passed through me suddenly. I could feel the pain and turmoil. The shadow has become a part of me, reminding me that things can always be worse. I've struggled to come to terms with things I cannot control. This was the day the shadows left me. I now feel I can achieve the most idealistic ideas. I hope they never return. I'm going to let that poem speak for itself because, again, like I just love perspective and I would add to it, but I feel like it kind of just speaks for itself. The next poem is called A Toll to Collect. And this is one of my favorites by him, actually. Gratified and indebted to what I have been given, it was delivered by the familiar haunting ghost carriage. The driver was translucent with red eyes. Horses of only bone pulled the blood-red landau. It was a vessel from a time long since lost. It carried lost souls to their intended realms, ones who could not find their way any other way. The carriage stopped in the middle of the road. I peered into the carriage and saw an unremarkable face, but a fire of familiarity burned inside of me. I know not of these faces, but I feel I must help them. The driver has left and the reins are now empty. I grab hold and command the horses to go forth, not knowing where I venture next is the toll I have always wanted to collect. And it's so interesting how I feel like, I don't know, like I said, in my own personal interpretation is it's about like being able to step into that role, but also not knowing if that's the role you want, if that makes any sense. I love the imagery, and I love the descriptions of like the actual scenario itself. I love like the descriptions of the horses. I love the descriptions of the driver, like with the translucence, with the red eyes. It's just it sets a scene for me, and I love writing that does that. I've noticed that sometimes, depending on the writer, when it comes to poetry, I have a harder time, because it's so emotional, I'm thinking about the emotion side to it. So I have a much harder time looking at the actual imagery aspect. So I love that he's very descriptive with his writing. And that's just something that like I said, I have a harder time finding in poetry, at least. And that's just me. But anyways, that is my poetry books. I think that besides my own. And this is my little collection. There's like maybe 6 or 7 total. But all different sizes, all different writers. But I love them so much, and I would highly recommend them if you're looking for poetry books.